Good afternoon, all. Welcome to March's speaker series. It's so great seeing everyone this afternoon. For those of you who have not attended in the past, Dear Go Labs speaker series is a monthly event where founders and leaders share advice on how they overcame challenges, capitalized on their target market, and developed their product, providing you with actionable insight for your own products and processes. For more information, you can find us on Facebook or online at centralmaine.org and deargolabs.org under our speaker series tab. I'd like to thank our sponsors for this afternoon's conversation. This free event is presented by Dear Go Labs and is sponsored by CGI, Valley Beverage, Thomas College's Harold Alphon Institute for Business Innovation, and Bricks Co-working and Innovation Space. In addition, I'd like to say hello to folks watching remotely at home or from their office. This conversation is being streamed live and will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. This afternoon's conversation is presented by bluShift Aerospace with Sasha Derry, founder and CEO of bluShift. In this speaker series, Sasha will discuss how bluShift is transforming rocket launch capabilities by developing vehicles which utilize cutting-edge materials, bio-derived fuel, and champion environmental sustainability. For those not familiar with bluShift, bluShift is a Brunswick Maine-based American aerospace firm with active operations at the Brunswick Executive Airport. And with that, I will hand it off to Sasha. Sasha, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. I appreciate it. And I wanted to do, if everybody could just bravely unmute for just one moment. I know at least one person, Liz, who's out there. Does anybody else live in Brunswick who's on today's meeting? A shout out to Liz. So if you were around Brunswick, or maybe even Thompson, last Tuesday, you possibly would have heard our very first full-size Marvel engine test. This is our full-size engine powered by a bio-derived fuel, not only bio-derived, but a non-toxic, nearly carbon neutral fuel. It was a year ago, and by the way, I just want to make sure everybody can see my screen. I'll switch it over. Let's see. It was a year ago, about a year and 1 month ago, that we made history here in Maine by being, not only here in Maine, but in the world, of being the very first company not only launch a rocket using bio-derived fuel, but to launch a rocket commercially using a bio-derived fuel that's non-toxic and nearly carbon neutral. What we're ramping up to here to doing it in Maine is not only designing these rockets, building these rockets, but hopefully in the near future, launching these rockets all the way to space for a new opportunity of a new class of satellites. And actually I have one in my hand. It's a model. They're literally this size. These are called CubeSats. There's a $28 billion market to launch these tiny little satellites into space to provide things like broadband communications if you're in Ukraine, or in Presque Isle, or Portland, or Earth imaging services. So we're really proud to hear what we're doing here in Maine and showing that space exploration can be done in a whole new way. There's a fundamental problem with the space industry as it stands today. It is fundamentally a dirty transportation industry. And if you look at all the other industries available today, all the other transportation industries today, whether it's auto, even marine and trucking, there's already efforts afoot to make them cleaner, whether it's electric vehicles or more carbon neutral fuels. The space industry is one of the final frontiers that has not been touched upon to be cleaner, not looked upon as an area that needs to be examined to be more environmentally sound. That is until last year. So last year when we launched, we actually saw the dialogue change within our industry. We saw reporters questioning the bigger companies, the billionaire companies. What are you doing to make this a cleaner transport? And this is because, I like to think, because of what we did and what we're doing today. So what are we doing? What's fundamentally bluShift up to, and what makes us fundamentally different? Well, we are working towards launching these tiny little satellites into Earth orbit, and it's an orbit that specifically we can uniquely access here in Maine that can't be done elsewhere in the world. Now, you already heard we use a bio-derived, non-toxic, nearly carbon neutral, environmentally friendly fuel. We'll also reuse 70% of our rockets, technically more if all goes well. Our technology, our rocket engine technology is one of the safest rocket engine techs that's out there in the industry today. It's not only safer, but it's also simpler and it's less expensive to build. And because of where we are in Maine, as you guys might have heard, maybe we won't have our very first launch here in Maine, but because of this, where we're located in Maine, we can access a particular orbit called a polar orbit, where we launch, we put satellites into this orbit around North and South Pole, that you can't do anywhere else on the eastern coast. The only place you can get to this particular orbit is an orbit that's desired by roughly half of these satellites who want to get up into space. So it's an incredible big chunk of that market. The only ways you can get rockets up into this orbit and put their payloads up there is at an expensive military base on the West Coast called Vandenberg, or off of an island in Alaska, also very expensive to launch from. So we believe that all of these advantages that we have and will have here ultimately from launching here in Maine is that we will have incredible flexibility, cost competitiveness that really puts us on par with some of the more well-known larger rockets that we see launching today from Cape Canaveral and beyond. What we're looking to do is provide a dedicated small, almost like, you'll hear me say like an Uber-like taxi-like ride service that's really catering to this small niche industry of tiny satellites that's growing. And nobody else is providing sort of a dedicated service. And that's fundamentally the problems that we found after interviewing over 40 different potential customers, is that there was a number of issues they had, but the very biggest issue they had was when they're looking to launch their tiny little satellites, is they are riding almost like hobo class. It's worse than coach class. They have no control of launching these big rockets, because when these big rockets are going up, there's big satellites going up there. There are many, many $1 million or billion-dollar satellites, and they're riding as second-class citizens. They have no control of when they get to go, how they get to go. And what we found over and over again was that the most commonly, these customers are being delayed 9, 12, and up to 9 to 12 months or over a year until they can actually launch their satellites up into orbit. And this is beyond the date that they were promised. Well, what we're planning to provide to our customers is an incredible flexibility and frequent launch cadence. So they can launch, we'll be launching several times throughout the year, and we'll have, our flexibility will be that our rocket will be really dedicated to these tiny, tiny satellites. So they are the primary customers. They are the business class riders within our rocket. We'll own and run our own launch facility. And this is unlike any other rocket company, except for the really big boys launching from Texas. It's our facility. We don't need to share the pad with somebody else. So we can launch when our customer needs and not when it's convenient for other rocket companies. The other big problem with rockets is the environmental damages we heard about. The vast majority of rockets use toxic propellants. You think of SpaceX. You think of another company that's competitive to us is Rocket Lab. They're using refined kerosene. These are toxic propellants that when they make their way into the ocean, and stages of the rockets do make it into the ocean, there's a little oil spill that's going on every time that happens. And because they're petroleum-based fuels, they're high carbon producers, so adding to global climate change. Well, our solution to that, of course, is that one, our rockets will be largely reusable, and we're recovering the vast majority of our rocket stages. Our fuel is very close to carbon neutral, and if our rocket perishes in the ocean, it is inherently non-toxic. Our fuel, our propellants are non-toxic and will not damage our ecosystem below, which is not only, I like to think, important to us as Mainers and respecting the marine resources and the life off of our shores, but beyond, well beyond into international waters. The other strategic, another major issue for a lot of rocket companies, and to some degrees our payloads, is safety. These rockets that we're competing with are often highly explosive, toxic in nature to work with, let alone to when they're being propelled to the skies above. And there's a lot of extra cautions that are needed to even launch your rockets or to develop them. And we have a real advantage there, where because our propellants are non-toxic, because they're very stable, non-explosive, it makes it much easier to develop these rocket engines. And that also means in turn that when we go to actually launch our rockets, we need far less logistical supports and infrastructure compared to your traditional liquid propelled rockets or your solid propelled rockets. So what are we up to? Where are we going? Where are we going in space? Well, we're ultimately bluShift, and with any luck, and a lot of work, within about a year from now or less, we will have our very first suborbital rocket launch. Our plans are to provide two different launch services: suborbital launch services, which basically just means we're going to send a rocket up into space. Our customers' payloads, the cargo, will experience between 5 to 8 minutes of 0G. And our primary audience for these launches are really going to be research customers. People who are being funded by NASA. It could be NASA themselves, NOAA, academic researchers, other civil researchers. And actually, we've got our first launch contract from an organization called MaxIQ, who are launching tiny little student payload experiments to do very basic science, but it's really nifty way for students across not only Maine, but across the world to do real space science. So we'll recover the payloads, we'll bring it back, we'll recover it from the ocean, bring it back to our customers back on land. Now this is all in motion to develop our second service, which we hope to start between 3 and 5 years from now, and that's the orbital launch services. That's really where the coast of Maine shines, providing that polar launch service, where we'll send up to 100 kilograms of these tiny satellites up into space, into polar orbit. Now, if you learned anything about these tiny little satellites, the whole concept behind the majority of the market is to send constellation of these up into space. We don't hope to send up constellations. The initial deployment of these satellites will be done by the big rockets. What we're looking to do is be sort of the maintenance vehicle, where a company has sent up several hundred of these satellites up at once. They have 1 or 2 that are coming down and they need to have them replaced. We want to be the sort of that maintenance vehicle, putting these satellites back into orbit. So let me just kind of share with you guys the sort of overall market, the dollars we're talking about. The suborbital market that we were talking about, there's an overall total addressable market of about $10 billion. And for us, there's like a serviceable market of about $400 million, which we would sort of directly go after. And in our expectations, we can get about $80 million of that. Now, the big behemoth, of course, is putting these tiny satellites into orbit. And again, we're not trying to get any gobble up or have the expectations we're going to own the market. But this, is a $28 billion market in total. About half of that is what we expect is available to us to directly go after. And, we expect to be doing about $1/3 billion of revenue in that market. So it's an incredible opportunity for a small new space aero company here in Maine. So why would people even choose us? Why would the suborbital customers choose us? And I was trying to think of a comparison to this. And I guess I keep coming back to a theme park ride, which is probably a really horrible metaphor, because some people probably want to get off that theme park ride as damn soon as they can. But imagine you're paying a certain, a better option is actually the movie theater, a drive-in movie theater. Imagine you're paying the cost for 1 ticket, but you get to see 2 movies. Well, that's kind of what we're offering our customers. Currently, our customers who go up suborbitally, their payloads, they're only going up for about 1 to 3 minutes maximum. And that means they have 1 to 3 minutes to do their science, whether it's studying a new type of propulsion technology, is to discover what happens to cells of plants that are exposed to the radiation of space. They have 3 minutes to do their experiments. What we're offering them is twice that. We'll double the time that they could do this. Seems very simple, very basic, but their options are very limited today to do this type of science. And we would double the time which they'd be exposed to space. We're told that this is a total game changer. Now, there's other esoteric things that our customers really like they just don't want to be thrown against the wall when they're sent up to space and hurtled there. So our rocket will actually be a little bit bigger because we're going to go very slowly as we punch through the atmosphere. We'll also offer a much larger general payload area. So we provide more leg room to our customers. Now, when it comes to the orbital side of things, you've already heard it. The number one thing is control. These guys they will become our primary customers. They are the first class riders of our launch services. And we will be focusing on providing a renewal of any assets that people have in the space as they fall out of orbit, because inherently these satellites are being put up into a very low Earth orbit that degrades within 3 to 5 years. And these satellites are so tiny, they can't maintain orbit for very long. So when we think about space junk and all that stuff, this type of satellites generally are not creating much space junk because they'll just inherently fall down and burn up in the atmosphere within a few years. The great thing is, because they burn up, they need to put them back up there. And that's a great opportunity for us. The other thing that we found out is that the customers have a really hard time creating these satellites to do these basic services for the big rockets, because so many of these big rockets are going up there, taking them up into the skies today. They're doing it on rockets that are made for human flight. And what that means is almost half of their development is just to ensure that their satellites, which have nothing to do with humans on a spaceship or on a rocket, making sure that there's no way it can possibly harm a person that's on that rocket. So they spend almost half their time doing their development time on that. We're basically removing that whole development cost from their requirements, because we can tolerate things that are slightly more dangerous to humans in a rocket. And then you've already heard about the polar orbits. And one of the coolest things that I think from a business perspective we found out was that we found out that they would pay us more to provide this dedicated service. So it's not only about price matching, but they're actually, and you think about it, all of us could take a train ride across the country, a freight train ride, and it might cost a few dollars. But most of us, when we need to go from point A to point B, we're willing to pay quite a bit per mile to take an Uber or a taxi service to go from point A to point B. And that's fundamentally what these customers are wanting. They know they can take these gigantic freight trains up to space and get from here to there, but they're not going to be able to go exactly where they want, nor when they want. And they're willing to pay a lot more to go when and where they want, essentially providing them with a customized, dedicated service. This slide is kind of just visually explaining why Maine is such an opportunity. When we launch directly over the ocean into what's called a polar orbit, we're not going over people and property. And really, it's hard to see it in this picture, but really, if you launch from anywhere off the coast of the eastern seaboard, you fundamentally go over people and property. What really is game-changing about us is really our rocket engine technology. It creates a real cost advantage. It's an environmental advantage. The fact that we'll ultimately be launching from our own launch range and launch site will save us tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million per launch. Because we're launching so much further away from people and property, we expect that a big chunk of what normally is very expensive for launches will go down for us. And that's the insurance for these rockets too, the launch. And we look up, how we stack up with our competition. Again, this is sort of from our customer's perspective, but, on a suborbital level, like I mentioned, we're doubling the time in space for these customers, and it's a game changer. When we look at it from orbital perspective, all the big boys in the smaller rockets, they're all providing sort of large cargo trucks to space, where all of these customers have to share their cargo space with other customers, and very few customers are getting priority. They're not going when and where they want. We would be basically the first company in the world to provide a real, truly dedicated, where do you want to go? We're going to take you when you will go, when you want to go, and where you want to go service. Over the last few years, we've really assembled a fantastic team of advanced experts, people who are really uniquely qualified to work together in a research and development environment, and develops rockets, rocket engines. Folks in our team, and this is a very small portion of the folks who've been contributing to our team. Not shown here is all the engineering and tech team, by the way, which is not fair. But it includes people who have on our team and people who have been entrepreneurs, not besides myself, who've started other successful companies, people who have been part of sounding rocket design teams, engineers with extensive instrumentation, testing experience, people who are actually key in the development of the rocket engines from SpaceX and Rocket Lab. And then folks who have a lot of experience in advanced manufacturing, CNC experts, have worked in metallic, and also folks who've worked in composite side of things. So we've also recently added to our team folks who are helping us really push our capabilities in terms of finance, understanding how to help finance our business and the business planning aspects and the launch logistics for our business. Our revenue plans, as you probably deduce, is sort of a two-phase approach. First, we're starting with the suborbital, and then we're going to level it. Not because the market isn't growing, but our focus is going to shift to take on the orbital growth. And that's really where sort of the hockey stick growth we see is in the orbital services. And the whole idea is we're creating this singular Marvel rocket engine using our bio-derived fuel. And that engine will be used, we'll use one of those for a suborbital rocket, and then 8 of those in our orbital rocket. And the idea is we're just punching out those engines left and right here in Maine, manufacturing them, and queuing up in an inventory in a warehouse here in Maine, and assembling it to the rocket as needed, whether it's a suborbital one or orbital one, and ramping up our launch services over the next several years. So what we've done so far today is, we've already done, our $100,000 plus seed fundraising. It's largely been funded by MTI, who's an amazing organization here in Maine. Our own resources have gone extensively in this since 2014. We launched Stardust, the prototype. We were told by investors, look, we know of 140 other rocket companies across the country. Everybody and their mother is developing a cool new rocket engine. Just prove that you can really launch this, get some customers. We don't care if you do it a mile, launch it up a mile, recover the payload safely, show us you can do that. And so that's exactly what we did up in Limestone a year ago. We got 3 customers, 2 of them were paying. We finished building the rocket engine. In 9 months, we got those customers. We built the rest of the rocket. We built the telemetry system. We worked with the FAA. We found the launch site. We launched in the dead of winter, not preferred, and recovered our payload successfully. And now we're pushing forward for a full-size launch vehicle. And as so hopefully everybody knows, we have started and are about a month, less than a month away from wrapping up our $1 million crowd equity funding campaign on WeFunder. And, that's been a really exciting, I think a really interesting tool for entrepreneurial endeavors such as our own, really novel ones who really want to push the boundaries. And maybe traditional angel funding is not a good enough vehicle to kind of lift the company up and out, especially when you're dealing with high tech and R&D intensive high tech stuff like we were doing with. And we're about to jump into our $6.5 million seed round. And this seed round is what's going to really propel us all the way to launch, get us to Cape Canaveral, get us to Kennedy Space Center to launch our very first qualifying rocket, which once we qualify, what this means is that we qualify in the eyes of NASA as a flight provider for a specific program they have, which allows these research customers to pay us between $350,000 and $500,000 per payload. And we'll have somewhere between 3 and 4 payloads of these payloads per launch of Starless Rogue. And then we're expecting that about a year from now, we'll begin our Series A round, in which we're looking to raise about $15 million. And that'll firmly get us started on the development of our orbital launch vehicle, which is really where the giant revenue starts developing for us. So this is where we're looking to spend our money. This is what we're looking to do for it. And one of the other great things about Maine is fame. Fame has, and I'm going to guess a lot of you guys on this call know about this, the Financial Authority of Maine. We had to apply for this, but basically it's an incredible opportunity for investors in a Maine company, right? It's a way, if you have any sort of tax liability in Maine, if you're an investor in Maine, you can get a 40% tax credit towards whatever you put in as an investment towards this company. There are limitations around that. Now, the other really cool thing, and to encourage money to be brought into Maine, is that if you're a venture firm outside of the state and you're investing in us, you will get up to 40% of your money back. It's almost, I shouldn't say this, but it's almost like an insurance policy. If we crap out, you guys as in the venture firms outside of the state of Maine, sort of have this guarantee that you'll get at least 40%, I mean, up to 40% of your money back. So it's an incredible insurance policy and a way to encourage investment into novel high-tech companies such as our own here in Maine. So we're really, really proud that we qualify for that program. So I shared a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff I didn't share, and I'm hoping you guys will ask questions and when I might be eating our fuel. So I'll open it up to people's questions out there. Don't be shy. And don't forget to unmute.
Sasha, really great. I'll just jump in here for a moment. Number one, congratulations on all the progress. And I know on behalf of, the Growth Council Dirigo Labs team, so admire the new kind of market and space, no pun intended, opportunity for Maine and the industry as a whole, just so incredible. And to think about our entrepreneurial ecosystem on where it's been to where it is now is fabulous. So many questions with regards to the tech and the excitement, but wanted to kind of step back a little bit on the interpersonal note. When you were launching out of Limestone about a year ago, so much work and planning and effort goes into leading up to that launch day. What does that launch day look like for you and your team? What are the nerves in the room? What's the sequencing like? What is that day like?
Yeah, well, as you probably know, that was our second attempt. The first attempt had to be scrubbed due to weather. Everybody's running on adrenaline. That morning we'd all gotten up at about 4 a.m. It was minus 14 degrees Fahrenheit. So we were really happy that our vehicle started to get over to the runway. And the rocket, the launch tower, everything, which launch tower was on the back of a large trailer, was all being parked into a hangar where the Air Force would have, I think it was the F-15s, the hot shots, ready to take on any Soviet planes coming our way. So it was sort of a really good backdrop to all this, and it just felt you sort of felt awestruck, this whole thing. And literally I got to push the hangar door to open it up, and it's this gigantic door. So it's this real thrill of the whole experience leading up to this in the first place. And we had the BBC there, which was sort of amazing that BBC would take any care about what a small Maine aerospace company is doing. And then, what I think really speaks loads is not about what I was doing or experiencing, but what the incredibly intelligent engineering team and tech team that we have and still have and have more of today we're doing. We had two failures that morning. Two things happened. And what spoke loads is that they were able to address it, fix it, and get it working within hours for an actual launch. And and one of the basic failures, it was so daggone cold, is you couldn't get your laptop to work anymore. So we were using computers to control launch, right? And literally the computer shuts down within a minute. So not only being the first first rocket company to launch a bio-derived fuel using a bio-derived fuel, but I think we might be the first rocket company to launch, and our mission control was a Prius, because he had to control it from a warmed up car. So the guys, we were all extremely excited once it launched, and there's some expletives that I think might have gotten accidentally in the media when we were jumping up and down. It's really hard to control that excitement. And you feel that childhood excitement, and it's rockets, and it's rockets that are not only about curiosity and exploration, but about doing this in a novel, more Earth respectful way, which I think is sort of the main way of doing things in the first place. So and if you got to see any of the videos of our recent engine test, it was like that all over again. Even though we didn't launch anything at the skies, but to get that full size engine roaring, you saw that sort of like just raw emotional excitement for what we're doing. It's really something.
That's so great. And so I'm sensing no team cowboy hats, a la Jeff Bezos, and if so, do those fit in a Prius with everybody?
No, you see a lot of winter hats going on around here. Yeah, yeah, none of those.
Hi, Sasha. This is Emily. Nice to see you again.
You too.
My question for you is, do you manufacture your engines in-house, or do you have a separate facility for that?
Yeah, we certainly do. We do right here at Brunswick Landing, just cat a corner to this office where I am right now, on the other side of the hangar. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a place that used to be, they were Kestrel airplanes used to manufacture, have a composites place here, and they manufacture it here. I was just showing a reporter here what we were doing, and just a few hours ago, and you know, kind of getting the visual sense of what we do here. There's, you know, it's rocket science, but like the construction and building of the rockets, that's really not rocket science. It's basic fabrication. You know, if you know how to build boats, you know how to do machining. It's that stuff, and this is stuff that we inherently do already in Maine in different industries. It's just applying that to the space industry.
Yeah. Will you always keep that in-house? Is that the goal?
That is the goal. And, you know, from the beginning and today, we still do, you know, we farm out a lot of the machining and some of those works. But the idea is to ramp up the vast majority of the manufacturing and certainly the assembly here in Maine. You know, we'll probably always contract out some level of machine work because it's more efficient and more effective.
Cool.
Sasha, I have a question. It's Susan from Dirigo Labs.
Yes.
Can you just explain or describe your typical customer to us? Like who needs a CubeSat and what would they be trying to achieve with it?
Sure. On the CubeSat front, so the biggest customers are companies like, there's a company called Spire, there's a company called Link with a Y, another famous one is called Planet. There's OneWeb based out of the UK who just, if you're following the space news, and I assume all of you guys constantly are just like me, you'll know that the Soyuz, the Russian rocket, this is a UK company, just told them, no, we're not launching your Earth communication satellites after all, you're stuck in Russia. But these are the size satellites that we would be launching. Again, not giant constellations, and they're largely providing broadband services, cell phone services. So you and I can use a cell phone from anywhere in Maine or Africa or Latin America, wherever we are in the world, and we just pick it up and we use your phone, right? Yeah. Just like we would connect to Wi-Fi wherever we are in the world, and use the same cell phone. There's a company like Planet I was mentioning, they do Earth imaging. In fact, bring it right back down to relevant recent events. A lot of the satellite images you see from Ukraine and what's going on there, that's thanks to satellites a little bit bigger than this one, but they're CubeSats, maybe a little more shoebox size with telescopes pointing towards the Earth, providing daily, if sometimes more than that, imaging services to know what's going on the Earth, usually being used for, you know, commerce purposes and understanding and weather purposes and the like, maybe even farming purposes, understand what's going on at agricultural level. But this is really where the big blossoming chunk of commerce is expected for the CubeSat side of things. And that's roughly 60% of the market expected over the next 10 years. And then there's a whole host of other things, let alone things, people pointing telescopes the other direction towards the universe.
Great, thank you, very exciting.
Sure, yeah.
Hey, Sasha. So
yes.
Really incredible presentation, and it's really cool to see where the company has come. You know, so knowing you've had experience, you know, being CEO of a previous company with Alt-E, and, you know, you've been an entrepreneur for well over 2 decades now. Where did the inspiration for bluShift come from, you know, knowing your background in engineering and physics, and, you know, how do you keep that inspiration going?
I think the inspiration came from living in East Orland, Maine. You know, just like so many places in Maine, not quite so much here in Brunswick anymore, but, you know, you can see the stars and the Milky Way. And when I was going up to Jonesport, especially coming back at night, I'd always stop by the house I used to live in Route 1 and peer up at the skies over Toddy Pond. And I'm just blown away that, you know, you can actually see, you know, what is effectively the sword of Orion, let alone the Milky Way. It's such a beautiful view. So, you know, that curiosity that I think Maine kids get, I'm hardly unique in that, and that you can see the universe. The question is, do you think you can access it? Do you think you can be part of that? And I think all too often we lose track of that. We lose track that kids and younger, the younger generations have that curiosity, especially here in Maine. What they don't know is whether or not they have access to those jobs and those careers here in Maine. We all think of that we have to leave Maine. I'm actually a perfect example of a boomerang, somebody who had to leave and absolutely tried to twice to come back to Maine. Took, third time was a charm. But for me, and I remember when I was a kid, I was making my own little handmade rockets. I won't say exactly how, but and maybe igniting them on the kitchen table and seeing them shooting across the kitchen table. I can't believe I didn't burn down the house. So I've always had that curiosity for the world and love of rockets and exploration of space. Having developed a small entrepreneurial company, I felt how tangible this all is, and then seeing the success of like SpaceX in bringing private industry to the space industry, and seeing actually there's a novel organization called Copenhagen Suborbitals, which I would have to give quite a bit of attribution for saying, indicating to me that I can do this, I can be part of this. Is a small group of people doing crowd equity funding to start up a company that's trying to, in this case, they want to get humans up into space, but doing it in a very sort of almost Yankee fashion, albeit in Copenhagen. So the combination of seeing how to start up a company, knowing how one can start up something in a very gritty fashion without much sources of revenues or giant investment, can accomplish great feats. I thought we could apply the same thing with what would become bluShift. And of course, the big inspiration for bluShift, once I knew that I wanted to do something in the new space realm and in the private industry, the big inspiration came from when I discovered that fuel. And I realized that nobody else was going down that route of using truly earth-friendly fuels that are near carbon neutral. And you can feel your brain fizzing up with bubbling up with excitement that there's something new and novel here. How do we push this forward into a way that we can generate revenue and make it an economically viable company? And I think that's really thanks to my experiences at Alt-E, my renewable energy company.
Very cool. Thank you, Sasha.
Sure.
Sasha, and again, thank you so much. And thank you for boiling this down in a very practical manner as well. Would love to kind of hear your perspective on competition within the addressable market space, and particularly as it relates, you mentioned kind of a game changer for you and your team, the doubling of the time in 0G to, I think it was 5 to 8 minutes. Is that one of the key market differentiators right now when it comes to your market competition?
Yeah, I think functionally when it comes down to it, it's for our customers, while I really want them to believe that, especially the sort of the academic researchers are going to be, well, if I had to choose between A and B, and this one is more environmentally friendly, of course, I would hope they would choose us because of that fact. But yes, definitely the ability to go twice the time in space is the fun of being able to double the time you can do research. It allows them people or organizations of people to do research they simply couldn't even do before because they didn't have that time. Now, our competition are the likes of, and this sounds big because they are big, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic. Now, if you know about these organizations, their primary point, their primary business is not taking research to space. That's their interim step of generating revenue because their whole purpose is taking people to space. So I know there's some level of concern both from customers and like in this case, NASA too, that gosh, I hope they still provide at least part of their rocket space to continue to provide research opportunities. So when you're going up, you're taking people up to space. Yeah, of course, more time in space would be great, but really it's about the experience of going up, seeing the curvature of the Earth, floating around, having the experience. And that's what these companies are targeting. They're not going after, their focus is not about, is not focused on the research market. Their focus is on the tourism market. So I see that as a fantastic niche market, and we will focus on those customers suborbitally.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
Sasha, something you actually mentioned that I was really interested to learn more about was the sets that Max IQ provides to students. Are there opportunities for students, that don't necessarily use Max IQ to get in touch with you guys to have access to those?
You get access to the Max IQ ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, today they literally can go to Max IQ's website and maybe Seth, you could say the URL out loud or put it in the chat room here. And students can buy not only the kits, but they can buy the kit and a flight with bluShift on Max IQ's website today, which is really cool. And by the way, these cool, I keep bringing this up, and this is actually sort of a dummy kit. There's no electronics on it, but they have like 80 different modules. They have each module has a different sensor. It could be like a sun insolation sensor. It could be like a UV radiation sensor, it could be temperature, barometer. There's like 80 different sensors and memory cards and stuff you can put together. So it's all up to the kids' creativity on what sort of science they want to do and collect. But they could also use these actually for non-space purposes too. They can use them to do like, I want to do an experiment out in my garden, and see how humidity and temperature affects and the light coming in affects the growth of my plants or something like that. There's all these cool novel things. Or they could put their experiment on the side of our launch pad, record how loud the rocket engine is and maybe record the CO2 that this is sensing and any other gases, because there's gas sensors they have on these too. So there's all these really novel, fun things that I think could spark kids' interest. And I know there's an effort afoot in Maine to make these kits available to students across the state, no matter what town you live in.
Very cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Sasha, curious about at kind of the industry-wide level from some of the biggest players and otherwise, from your perspective, say 5 to 10 years from now, what does innovation look like? What's that big next tech gain? What are folks kind of experimenting with right now? If we could wave a magic wand and have that huge R&D budget.
Yeah, I think there's two things that come immediately to mind. It would be sort of the third stage of the rocket, ion drives, that type of thing, solar sails to kind of get experiments and commercial products further out into orbit or into other orbits around the moon, for instance, to support the Artemis mission from NASA. The other big area, which I think is really from a customer standpoint, and it'd be really cool if a Maine company developed this, is there's a big effort afoot for laser communications. So instead of using traditional RF, you use point-to-point lasers, and you get extremely high bandwidth, data bandwidth, and it becomes extremely secure in terms of, you're point-to-point as opposed to if somebody can intercept pretty easily RF communication. So I think that's a big part of it. The other, from our perspective, one of the other ones too is, innovations in lightweighting the vehicle, composites. I would personally love to see, for instance, the colleges and universities of Maine working to develop more biocompatible composites out there, things perhaps resins that are more life-friendly, composites that are derived from, and I know University of Maine has done some of this, lightweight composites that can be used for structural elements. And, for instance, just in the last year, we saw research, I forget which institution it was, develop wood that was transparent and could be used in place of glass. And it was actually stronger than glass and could be used sort of a structural element as well as being a transparent thing. So I think there's some really interesting lightweighting opportunities in this aerospace industry that Maine could get to, let alone the service industries of, maybe there's going to be a pine star, I think that star is something that's where we're shooting for. We're starting here, going up to there. That, maybe there's going to be a Pine State broadband services that's providing broadband services from the stars down to the whole eastern, the eastern coast, eastern seaboard here in Maine. So there's lots of neat opportunities, I think, that we could see in the next 10 years, should we decide to bring them to Maine. or keep them in here in Maine.
Yeah, thank you for that. And exciting on the tech, but also those spin out businesses and the professional services and industries that then support the industry. What a potential for impact.
I would say one other thing that I am itching to have time and resources to put to personally is considering if there's a way in which we could vertically integrate our fuel production. So from the ground literally up to produce and grow, essentially grow our fuel here in Maine. I think that'd be really neat. And it could be something that could be applied to elsewhere in the world.
Sasha, it's Susan again.
Yeah.
That was kind of the nature of my question. Can you talk a little bit about the actual fuel? Just describe its properties and why it's so great.
Sure. So it's a solid fuel. It's not a liquid fuel for starters. It's pretty dense. It's more dense than traditional rocket fuels. We actually get more calories per cubic centimeter. It actually costs less than traditional RP1 rocket fuel per kilogram. And, you know, it requires relatively little to process. You know, you compare that to, you know, I think when people think biofuel, they think biodiesel, or you might think ethanol. I think there's questions as to both whether how carbon neutral either of those are, right? I remember decades ago, you know, almost when the US began incentives to support ethanol from corn, it was something like for every calorie of ethanol you get, you put in 1.1 calorie of petroleum. That is not the case for our fuel. Now, unfortunately, our fuel can't be used for, like, you can't power your car with it. It's a solid fuel. And really our fuel and our engine really made together. You need this engine to work with this fuel. I don't know if we'll ever have hybrid rocket engine cars, but, you know, according to a Batman episode, I think that might be possible. So, but the fuel can really be, you know, created across farms across America. And really, truly across the world. There's nothing that's particular about Maine, for instance, but in fact, our fuel benefits from farms that use less toxic agricultural processes. So it's my way of skirting around and not tell you what the key core substance is. It's not manure, because people often think it's manure. So I could say that I could eat it, or sometimes I put up my poor little daughters that they could eat it and nothing bad would happen. I wouldn't freak out about it. I might get slightly constipated, but that's it, I swear. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
So along those same lines, I have a more of an IP related question, because that's, you know, I come from a world of IP. It sounds like you're kind of treating this as a trade secret, as far as just not telling anyone. How do you go about managing that with your employees, or like actually making the fuel?
It's a need to know. And so we've lost a few employees that once they found out, they shouldn't have found out. No, I'm joking. Nothing bad happened. It is sort of a need to know basis. So not everybody on the staff knows. It's behind lock and key. It's very select people who get to mix everything up and get it. There is some processing on our side that we have to go through to get it ready to put into the fuel core. So it is very much secret. And we treat it like a secret because it is a secret. It's need to know basis only. Yeah.
That's great.
In fact, we're struggling with it right now because as we do grow, we've grown quite a bit in the last year. We need to let more people on staff know so that we can put some resources on the fuel development side, because it's an effort to get it all spun up. When instead of dealing with 14 pounds of fuel, we're dealing with over 600 pounds of fuel every time we have an engine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
Not a question. This is Liz. I just wanted to let everyone know that I live just a few miles from the launch site. And when the rocket went off in Brunswick, we thought it was just the snowplow going by. And really, you know, it's just hearing the snowplow is a very familiar sound here in Maine. And now apparently hearing rockets is a totally familiar sound too. It did not disrupt our life at all, Sasha.
And it didn't wake up the kids, right? I hope.
No.
Okay, phew.
if anything, they were disappointed that there was not a snowplow outside.
God, that hurt. That hurt. Yeah, and we're going to be doing our engine tests earlier in the evening, early in the day, not in the evening. So to the folks here in Brunswick, and we'll be giving more notification to the town as well. So yeah, and we're allowing investors. We're actually doing a couple of different events for investors in our WeFunder campaign who invest over a certain amount to come and view our engine tests, and we'll be doing some investor fundraising events for our next rounds too, for folks to come and watch, get a tour of the facilities and watch one of the engine tests. It is fun. It is really fun. And by the way, Liz, you're actually not miles away. You're probably about 0.6 miles away. Just want to let you know, it's pretty close.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sasha, with regards to the crowdfunding campaign, and maybe for either investors or VCs on here today or watching at home later, where can folks find more information on that?
Yeah, so if you go to wefunder.com/ I think it's bluShift.aerospace, but you just go to WeFunder and look up our name, bluShift, blue without an E. You'll find our campaign. The campaign ends on April 4th of this year, 2022. And we're shooting for $1.07 million, and we're at 950,000 right now. So we're almost there. We're very excited. It's been a long road. And about a month later, we will firmly shift into our seed round. That's at $6.5 million seed round. It'll be a convertible note round. And we're looking for folks that want to get on that. We're actually wanting to talk to folks now, and I've been doing a number of pitches and sharing our pitch deck with folks, and happy to get into a lot of the financial details with anybody who's interested. And they can reach out to me directly, Sasha, that's with the C, S-A-S-C-H-A, Derry, I guess it's not on the screen, D-E-R-I at bluShiftAerospace.com, or just call through the front lines and they'll get you through to me. And we're looking to wrap up that round of funding, by early summer. And that really propels us, one, to hire up the staff that we need, get the production levels up, fabrication, wrap up the engine testing, and get Starless Rogue fully designed and built so we can launch, I guess, apparently from Florida before the end of the year if all goes well.
Awesome. So for folks, there's some links here in the chat and in the deck, and to Sasha directly. I would also just say, Sasha's incredible team that we've had an opportunity to chat with personally and digitally are incredible for such a busy operation. Really impressive. That speaks to leadership, in my opinion, how nimble everybody is. So kudos to you and your team, Sasha.
Thank you, Garvin. I appreciate you recognizing that, because my face is getting seen a lot, but I think what's underappreciated is the team that's behind me that really does all the hard work. And just even this last engine test, we had people working virtually 7 days a week, early morning, late nights. And these are really capable, gritty, and that's key, gritty, intelligent individuals working on the team. And we're very fortunate to have them all.
Absolutely. Just pausing for a moment here for any other questions. Otherwise, we'll certainly be, thank you, Sasha. This has been incredible, so exciting. And just the momentum is just spectacular to watch. Les, any questions? Sabrina, would you like to take us away?
Yeah, I'm just pausing here for any questions last minute. All right. Well, thank you, Sasha, for your insightful presentation, and to our audience for joining us this afternoon. This conversation has been recorded and will be available at a later date for viewing on our YouTube channel. Next month, Dirigo Labs is thrilled to be returning to in-person presentations, and we will be featuring Amy Van Haren, founder and CEO of Pump Spotting, who will be discussing how Pump Spotting is providing professional support to working mothers on Thursday, April 14th at 5 p.m. at Bricks Co-working and Innovation Space located in the Hathaway Creative Center in Waterville. For more information on how you can attend this event and upcoming speaker series, please visit our website at centralmaine.org and click on our speaker series tab. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your week.